This might be my most controversial video to date. Today, I am spilling the tea on humidity. I am busting myths about what works to increase the humidity in your home for your houseplants, and talking about whether or not you even need to. Welcome to my channel. I'm Cece from One Green Pea, and I actually did just spill my tea. Today's video is all about humidity. I am going to talk about what humidity is, how it affects your plants, and the best ways to increase the humidity in your home. I'm going to save you time, money, and bother today by really breaking down what works and what not to waste your time on. If that sounds good, let's get started. Humidity is quite simply just the moisture content of the air. In general terms, colder air holds less moisture than warmer air, and so as the temperature rises, so too does the humidity. How does this apply to our houseplants? Most of the plants in our home are tropicals, which means they come from the jungle. Now, I'm not talking right now about your succulents or your cacti. I'm talking about your pothos and your philodendron and your Hoyas, the leafy plants, the trailing plants. Since we don't live in a jungle, these plants come into our home and have to adapt to household levels of temperature and humidity. For most of them, that's actually fine. They will thrive in normal household conditions. Some of them require more. I'm looking at you, ferns and calathea, and they'll simply wither under household conditions. So it's important to know what your humidity level is and then know the best ways to moderate it. So how does low humidity affect your plants? In low humidity, plants tend to dry out more quickly. They lose the sheen on their leaves, and they can also be more susceptible to certain pests, especially spider mites. You can tell that your plant is suffering from low humidity if you see brown edges on your leaves, or the leaves turn crispy, for instance. Most plants will thrive with a humidity level of about 40 to 60%. So the very first thing I would suggest is that you measure the humidity in your home where you have plants. Now, the humidity in your home is going to vary from room to room depending on the size of the room and the activities that take place in the room. For instance, in a bathroom where you are showering and flushing the toilet and using the sink, you're putting more water vapor into the air. Similarly, a kitchen is likely to have a little bit higher humidity. I use an inexpensive hygrometer that I ordered from Amazon. I will put a link to that down in the caption below. And this is really useful because it tells not only the temperature of the room and the relative humidity, but it also tells the maximum and minimum for the previous 24 hours. Plants tend to do the best in humidity levels between 40 and 60%. I find that my home tends to range between about 30 and maybe max 50. The 30 is a bit on the low end, and that tends to happen more in the winter when we have the forced air on and we're using our fireplace. Now, currently, this room is at a 41%. So at that percent, I'm not going to worry about my plants at all. If you find that your relative humidity most of the time is between 40 and 60%, you probably don't even have to watch the rest of this video. However, if you have humidity-loving plants in your collection, such as ferns and calathea and anthurium and alocasia, then you're probably going to want to watch the rest of this video because you're going to want to bring in more humidity. Most of us don't have that level naturally in our homes that those types of plants prefer. Okay, time to spill the tea. You will see all over the place different tips and hacks and tricks for increasing the humidity in your home for your houseplants. A lot of the things that you will read or hear, they simply don't work. And if you're going to go to the trouble and the expense of trying to do something to benefit your houseplants, I think we should make sure that it actually is going to have an effect. I will start, first of all, with the things that do not work, simply do not work. Number one is misting. Misting your plants does not raise the humidity level in the air around your plants substantially or for very long. Yes, if I mist my plant, temporarily there's an increase in humidity around this plant, but it goes away as soon as the water evaporates. And even more so, a lot of plants don't like having their foliage wet, and it can lead to fungal problems. So as far as humidity, stop misting. The second hack that you will read about is a pebble tray. Pebble trays also have been proven not to increase humidity levels. Now, a pebble tray is just simply having a tray underneath your plants filled with small pebbles into which you pour water, and then the theory goes, as the water evaporates, it increases the humidity around that plant. Well, studies have been done, and I will cite one of them in the caption below, that show that the humidity level only rises for a small amount above that pebble tray, and most likely doesn't even get to the point of the plant. So don't waste your time with a pebble tray. I want to mention two things that have a small effect on increasing humidity. Number one is grouping plants together. Plants release water into the atmosphere through transpiration. So when you have a large number of plants grouped in a small space, then all of that vapor contributes to a larger amount of water in the atmosphere, therefore raising the humidity level in that small space. Now, this works best in a small room, because in a larger room like this one that I'm in, all of that transpired vapor really just distributes into the large airspace in the room. And the second factor that helps a small amount is location. So placing your plants in a room where the humidity level is higher is going to benefit them. I use my bathroom for my plants that prefer a higher level of humidity. So when we are showering or using the sink, then more water is being released into the atmosphere. But that only works when those activities are happening. So during a period of time when no one is in the bathroom, why then the humidity level in that room just stays the same as the rest of the house. So helps a little bit. Now I'm going to talk about three things that do work, and then one thing that should work, but probably doesn't. Number one on the list of things that absolutely do work to increase the humidity in your home is move to the jungle or Florida or someplace where there is higher humidity in the atmosphere in general. If you live like I do in Idaho, there's very low humidity much of the year, and therefore the humidity in my house is going to be low. So number one, move to the jungle. Number two, using a cloche or a terrarium. I created this terrarium situation for a small anthurium that I have here. I knew that this plant would want a large amount of humidity, more than I could provide in my home. And so I found this jar with a lid. I put some pebbles and rocks at the bottom, and then put just the plant right in its grow pot, right inside of the sand. So I kept it right in the grow pot. And then I put humidity loving ferns around it. I keep the lid on most of the time, but when I see a lot of condensation buildup, I take the lid off, give it a little bit of a breather, because when the lid is on, this is creating 100% humidity in here. This plant is thriving. It's pushing out new leaves. The leaves are glossy and it looks really healthy. And I've had it in here several weeks and I haven't had to water the plant. So this definitely works. The third thing that 100% absolutely works for increasing the humidity level for your houseplants is using a grow tent or a grow cabinet. So the IKEA cabinets that people transform into plant cabinets have become very, very popular. And what is happening is that you are creating basically a terrarium, a sealed environment. You're putting a humidifier in and a fan to move the air around, and you can have the humidity basically at whatever you want it to be. So definitely it works. It's just that they are rather expensive and challenging to maintain. So if it's really important to you to have a lot of humidity loving plants in your home, that's a perfect way to do it. Let's jump into the biggest controversy of the whole video. And that is a discussion of humidifiers. In theory, a humidifier adds moisture into the air. Perfect, sounds great in theory. In practice, most of the time they don't work for what you want them to do. The humidifier has to be the appropriate size for the space you put it in. Otherwise, you are just increasing the humidity in a tiny space, and then quickly that vapor is going into the greater room and the benefit is lost. The machine also has to put out an appropriate amount of vapor, and not all of them do. You also have to keep it on all the time. You have to clean the tank regularly, or minerals will build up and it will clog the holes, and then it won't be putting out as much vapor as you want, and it also can get really nasty inside. Another factor that a lot of people don't realize when they're using humidifiers is the humidifier has to be placed high. It can't be placed down on the floor. Humidity is heavier air, and so it's going to sink. And if it's already down on the ground, you're never going to get that humidity rising up high enough to benefit the plants. If you can meet all of those requirements and you have a unit that is sized appropriately for your space, then great, a humidifier will work. If you don't, if any of those are not available, then you're wasting your time and your money. So I would suggest that you not use a humidifier in that case. I did a little experiment with 2 different humidifiers that I have. Understand, I have been a big proponent of humidifiers. I have bought a lot of humidifiers over the years. Little ones that put out the fragrance, larger ones that are supposed to humidify your entire space. I recently did an experiment where I turned my humidifier on. It had a really large tank and I put it at the max capacity, at the max vapor. I checked the humidity at the beginning and I checked it 3 hours later. Guess what? My humidity had actually dropped 1%. So it was doing absolutely nothing. I got rid of all of my humidifiers. I have a large house with a lot of space, and that is just not something that I am going to spend any more money or any more time or effort on. At the end of the day, my top tip is bring plants into your home that are going to thrive in the atmosphere you can provide. If you want to go to the extent of creating a terrarium or having a grow cabinet or a grow tent for your more tender plants, great. I encourage you to do that. But if you just want some beautiful plants around your home, then be sure to know your plant, study the plant ahead of time, and know that it's going to do well in your environment. I do a lot of meet the plant videos where I talk about the needs of a particular plant, a particular species, and so refer to those. If you have any questions, you can always leave me a comment on one of my videos or send me a direct message. Thank you for watching. Thank you for sticking through the controversy of this video. I hope that it was enjoyable and helpful to you. If you enjoyed it, please give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel so you never miss any of my planty content. As always, my plant friends, let's keep growing together a greener world.